Get ready for the big revival. The real estate revival, that is. Now on 77 WABC, your New York weekend.
Get ready for the big revival.
It's Rand on Real Estate. Look out! With Greg Rand.
Big Real Estate Revival. My name is Greg Rand, your host on 77 WABC and WABCRadio.com. Rand on Real Estate is all about self-reliance in a world gone mad. We're going to talk about independence today. Independence from your government, independence from corporations and employers, independence from stockbrokers. We're going to take your calls. We're going to talk about self-reliance at a time when we think that is absolutely necessary. I'm joined by Laura Smith, my co-host. How are you?
Wonderful to be with you. Beautiful day.
It's a beautiful day.
And a somber day.
It's a somber day, yeah. Actually, I want to dedicate today's show to a friend of mine named Rich Frazier, good friend who was killed on 9/11/2001 in the World Trade Center. Just wanted to say that we love him, miss him, and we will never forget him. His wife, Sue, his son, Aiden, and just can't stop thinking about him throughout the year, but especially today. But back to the show. Our call-in number here is 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-WABC. And I want to hear from you today because we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship in an economic crisis. And that sounds like an oxymoron, but you know what? It's not. There are opportunities out there, particularly in times of strife like this, where you just can't rely on anybody else to take care of you. As much as the government seems to want to these days, they're just not doing a heck of a good job. And as much as you'd like to think that job security is real, we're afraid these days that it may not be. And as much as you'd like to hand your money over to investment advisors and stockbrokers and have them take care of it, we know that as well-intentioned as they might be on their good days, they are like stampeding cattle on their bad days, and they can't quite seem to get their brains around stability and the lack of volatility. In fact, they make money on volatility. So how, as an entrepreneur, can you secure your own financial future? How can you make sure that you're absolutely bulletproof for whatever comes? And I'm here to say that entrepreneurship in business is the answer. And the business that I focus on is real estate, because real estate investment is basically something that anybody can get involved in, anybody can learn. And that's what we're about here. So if you're somebody who has thought about it, has done it, is thinking about it right now, get that call number down, 800-848-9222, and give us a ring, and we'll help you bulletproof your plan and help you make sure that you do this right, which is a very important thing, because what we've all seen in the last couple of years is that it is possible to do real estate wrong.
Oh,
right?
It's more than possible.
It's more than possible. There's
very likely for a lot of people, but
there's a couple of dozen million people out there that might have done it wrong. And that brings me to my favorite segment of the show, and I know Laura's favorite segment of the show also, which is called Smart People Saying Dopey Things About Real Estate. And I do this because they just never stop saying dopey things about real estate. There's a lot of people out there in positions of authority, either on a television camera or behind a word processor for a magazine or newspaper, or behind some microphones, never here, but other radio stations, who just spout off about real estate, never know what they're talking about, and I use this platform to go back at them. And I promised my friends on Facebook that I was going to burn a copy of Time magazine today in the studio, which I don't want you to worry, because I'm not going to do that.
yes,
but
please, not here, not today.
We're not going to start a fire, but Time magazine deserves it, and I want to share with you. These are the people, the smart, probably geniuses, that just showed how totally inept they are about commenting and analyzing the real estate market with their recent cover, which said "Rethinking Home Ownership." Maybe you caught it. Rethinking Home Ownership. And the article goes into painful detail about how home ownership, based upon the experience of the last 4 years, this is the new reality. Home ownership is dead. Home ownership is not. They don't just say it's not good for everybody. They project the idea that it really isn't all that great after all. In fact, it's not even part of the American dream and never should have been. And of course, New York Times followed suit, and then a whole lot of those other smart people who don't have any original ideas took that story template and ran with it. So I want to start with Time magazine, because they've been around for a long time, and you'd think that I think it must be 75 or 100 years they've been around. You'd think that all that experience of an entire century where home ownership was something that helped families secure their retirement, helped families just live well, just part of the American dream, that in this age that we're in now of short-sightedness and the short attention span society, immediate gratification, reality TV, it's just, it's getting crazy out there. And so now people believe that the last couple of years is the new reality forever. And so I want to play a couple of clips because Time Magazine's writer, Barbara Kiviat, hope I'm pronouncing that right. Barbara, when I read her article, first person I called was the senior most guy that I know in the real estate business. I won't use his name, but I asked him, had he seen the article? He said yes. And I asked him what he thought of it. And he said, well, something tells him that the writer probably graduated from Yale or Harvard in the last couple of years, probably still lives home with her mom and dad in some fancy apartment in Manhattan, and I just have to ignore her. But I can't. That's why I have the show. I was walking through the airport in Charleston, South Carolina, when I saw Time Magazine, and I swear I almost went off the rails right there in the airport. I almost lost it. But then I remembered that I would be here shortly and have a chance to give the counter argument. So if we could play the clip of Barbara Kiviat. Can we play that now, please?
For the better part of a century, there has been, in the United States, a fetish around this idea of homeownership. Over the decades, this idea that we should all be homeowners continued. The problem with all of this, though, is it was sort of based on this flawed assumption that owning a home was an ultimate good.
It's just,
please.
Listen, I don't want to describe what she looks like, but she looks like she's fresh out of school. Like, home ownership, is not as good as it used to be for decades and decades.
If it wasn't so depressing, it'd be funny.
Yeah, it is depressing, but it's also really funny, and hopefully it's going to get funnier in the next couple of minutes. Barbara's not listening, I'm sure. I'm sure Barbara Kiviat and her friends are someplace having a latte and a croissant someplace and reading the New York Times and trying to figure out why the rest of the country is not smart enough to realize how wonderful the president is. But what she does in this article is twist herself into pretzels, trying to make the argument that the experience of literally hundreds of millions of families over a century, that experience was kind of an anomaly, and it would be much better if we all just basically rented, and for most people it's better. And they made these arguments about how this belief that the stability in neighborhoods and stability in communities and the American dream, in fact, in the New York Times, they actually said that the historian who coined the phrase, the American dream, never actually mentioned home ownership. So this whole thing is just a fallacy. But here was my favorite argument, which is one that's gotten some legs in other media outlets. Let's play clip number 2.
There are a lot of other negatives to homeownership. When you own your house, you're a lot less mobile. You can't just pick up and move.
Right. So according to Time Magazine, and it's not just Barbara, Time Magazine, editors, publishers, everybody's involved in making sure what's on the cover is what they want to be on the cover. So here's the world that Time Magazine thinks you ought to live in. You ought to have a go bag packed in your trunk, okay? Go bag. Just have it packed because you might get a pink slip and, man, you just want to be able to bolt. Just bolt, grab the kids. You can just picture the kitchen where there's a half-eaten grilled cheese and a thing of chocolate milk half drank. The TV's still on, but off they go because it's mobile America. You need to be able to bust out of there. No roots. Just run. And they basically tie home ownership to unemployment in this article and in this argument. And what it reminds me of is that I have little kids, okay? And my kids are wonderful, but there have been times when they behave badly. Anybody who has kids has times when the kids behave badly. And if you go and you read on the web about how to manage a kid who's strong-willed, you read a couple of books, you talk to a child psychologist, you watch Super Nanny, and what you learn, consistent among all those professionals, they will all tell you that if you introduce stability, routine into the life of a child, that's going to even out those rough edges. That's what takes whatever emotional turmoil they're going through. Structure, routine, stability. Now, I mention kids because I've always seen kids as human nature on display. Kids, they're not biased. Kids do not have, they're just fresh brains and hearts, and they react and they respond. And if stability and structure and routine is what makes a kid's life good, then it's the same thing for an adult because all a kid is a young human, right? So adults, same thing. So I feel bad for the people that read Time Magazine and buy into that nonsense because they're missing out on something that is so easy. Maybe real estate's not an investment when you own the home, or live in the home. Maybe it's a savings account. You have to pay your rent anyway, so you might as well pay a mortgage. Stay in the place for a long time. When you're done, you own it outright. You can live with only having to pay your taxes. It's very, very simple and easy. But according to Time Magazine, you should rent, which is okay, because if you tell me which house you want to live in, I will buy it. and I'll rent it to you, and you can pay off my mortgage. So everybody wins. This is Greg Rand on Real Estate on 77 WABC. The call number is 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-WABC. We're going to take your calls when we get back. So
anything we can ask you? Can we ask you about renting versus leasing?
You can ask me anything related to real estate. And what I want to do is I want anybody out there who's got young children, or if you're a grandparent and have young grandchildren, or if you have anybody in your life who has kids or planning on having kids, go get them and bring them to a radio, because we're going to talk about a strategy that applies to them when we come back.